Hello everyone and welcome in this webinar dedicated to modeling tumor growth and tumor growth inhibition with the Monolix suite. Today I will present the new library of tumor growth inhibition models in Monolix released with the last version of Monolix 2020 last year. I will begin with a detailed overview of the models and options in the library, and I will discuss the implementation of these models in Monolix. Then I will show how the library can help to build tumor growth models in a stepwise manner on two real dataset examples. Note that I have already presented this library in two webinars last year in June, before it was released, so today I will mostly repeat some information that I have already given in these previous webinars, but in a more condensed way. I will begin the lecture by showing you quickly the library of tumor growth models that is now available in Monolix. The library is available here. And of course, many different models exist in the literature, some of them being quite complex, so this library is not exhaustive. But in this library, we have selected common simple modules from the models in the literature, and we have organized them in a modular way. So the library allows to select among different functions to describe the unperturbed tumor growth with or without saturation with these different growth functions, and combine this choice with another for the treatment effect, with different options for the dynamics of the treatment effect, and in addition, choose to consider or not several additional features such as a delay or emergence of resistance to the treatment. So I will detail all these options during the webinar. And on the top, there is also a short list of full models from the literature that can be useful as well. So models from this library can be used to easily test different hypotheses on some tumor growth data, and it can also be convenient to use them as a basis to derive more complex models when needed, for example, to take into account combinations of therapies. The library also provides some flexibility for what kind of data is used, with different options for the initial tumor size and the treatment that I will also detail later. I will now show an overview of the common tumor growth models that we have implemented in the library. They are divided into two broad categories, those which are able to capture the saturation as the tumor growth, and those which do not. Indeed, after a growing phase, tumors experience saturation due to limits of nutrient supply, but this saturation is not always observed in the data. So we'll start with the most simple model, the linear growth function, which assumes a constant zero-order growth rate, and that can be implemented as an ODE system here, or also as an analytical solution. For each model, I have drawn a figure of a simple simulation with typical parameter values, and we can see on this figure with lighter curves that shows the impact that changing some parameters has on the prediction. Of course, here for the linear model, it is quite trivial. We have only one parameter, but this will help understanding the dynamics for more complex models. And all these figures, you can find them on the online documentation for the library. So for example, for the quadratic model, which combines a linear and quadratic growth rate, the figure shows that changing the linear rate KJL has an impact on the whole curve right from the start, while changing the quadratic rate KJ2 has a larger impact when the tumor size TS is high. The next model is exponential, a very simple model that gives a straight line in log scale and assumes that the growth rate of the tumor is proportional to the tumor burden. There is a generalized exponential model or power law in which an exponent gamma is added to define a power law for the growth of the tumor. If this gamma exponent is between 0 and 1, then this model provides a description in terms of a geometrical feature of the proliferative tissue. For example, the case where gamma is equals to 2/3 means that the growth rate is proportional to the surface of the tumor rather than the whole volume. The next model is exponential linear. Tumor growth dynamics can be observed to follow two distinctively phases of growth sometimes. An initial exponential growth followed by a linear growth phase as the nutrients go scarce. So this simple exponential linear model captures this with a transition time called tau between the two phases, exponential and linear. And this transition time is computed with this formula to ensure that the solution is continuously differentiable. And it corresponds to a threshold size for the tumor size, TS, of the linear growth rate divided by the exponential growth rate. But the transition time can be easily calculated only if the model is used alone and not combined with any treatment effect or additional feature. So when the model should be more complex, it is more convenient to use the Simeoni growth function, which approximates the exponential linear model with a single differential equation. And this model doesn't have an analytical solution. For a good approximation with a sharp switch between the first order to the zero order growth, the parameter psi, indicated here, has to be fixed to a high value, for example, 20 in the library, as in the original reference. And in that case, the prediction here is really the same as the exponential linear, and you have the same figure in log scale here. So similarly to the exponential linear and Simeoni models, the core tumor growth model is a nonlinear growth function that follows an initial exponential growth followed by a linear growth phase. And its particularity is a smooth transition between exponential and linear growth phase rather than a rapid switch after a threshold. Let's now see some tumor growth models with saturation. The most common are the logistic and the Gompert models. So the logistic model assumes an exponential growth rate which decelerates linearly with respect to the tumor size. This results in sigmoidal dynamics with an initial exponential growth phase followed by a growth saturated phase as the tumor reaches its carrying capacity called TS max. A generalization of the logistic equation has been formulated, which brings more flexibility for the shape of the curve with the exponent gamma. And the Gompertz growth is a special case of the generalized logistic model when gamma is equal to 0. This model can be written like this, also with this closed form here, or with this equation. Of course, all the equations written on this slide, all the slides of this webinar are also available on the documentation of the library on our website. So here the parameter alpha is the initial proliferation rate if TS0 is equals to 1, so the initial tumor size, which means that alpha could be compared to proliferation rates measured in vitro, and beta is the rate of decrease. The carrying capacity, TS max, that corresponds to this level, this maximal tumor size, can be derived as this formula. So drawback of this parameterization is that TS0, alpha, and beta all impact the carrying capacity, and in particular, the estimates for alpha and beta are usually quite correlated. So it is also possible to parameterize the model with TS max, beta, and TS0 instead of alpha, beta, and TS0. And this gives these formulas. This has the advantage of better separating the impacts of the parameters on the curve because the carrying capacity is now directly estimated and it is not impacted by the initial tumor size or beta. However, if the maximal size TS max is not really observed in the data, as is usually the case, then the standard error on TS max can be quite high. It can be quite difficult to estimate TS max. So nonetheless, this is a parameterization that we have chosen for the library because it is also more convenient to combine it with other features, such as the dynamic carrying capacity. But it is quite easy for the user to change this parameterization if it makes more sense if this parameterization with alpha and beta makes more sense rather than to estimate TS max. So that was the logistic and Gompertz functions. These functions have also been mixed with some other functions to bring more flexibility. For example, the exponential Gompertz model assumes that the tumor follows at first an exponential growth and then is akin to a Gompertz model once the nutrients start to go scarce. Another example is a hybrid Simeoni logistic model in which the logistic model has been used in combination with the Simeoni growth by adding this factor here on the numerator to combine the exponential, linear, and the logistic characteristics on a single curve and add a saturation. Finally, in the saturation, in the growth functions with saturation available in the library, we have the von Bertalanffy model based on balance equations of metabolic processes. It is a bit different than the others because in this case, the saturation relies on a spontaneous decay component, which can be due to apoptosis. And the growth is proportional to the surface of the tumor, hence the 2/3 exponent. This model also has a generalized form where the exponent 2/3 here is replaced by a parameter gamma, which should stay between 0 and 1. So now that we have seen all these tumor growth functions, we can compare on these figures the different models without saturation on the left and with saturation on the right for typical parameters on linear scale and on log scale. So on this figure on the left, we can see that the exponential model in purple has the fastest growth after some time, followed by the quadratic in brown. And the linear, exponential linear, and Cork model all follow a linear growth after some time. And the power law in dark purple has a faster or slower growth than the exponential, depending on the gamma exponent. Now on the right, for the models that are able to capture saturation, we see that the Gompertz model in black has the fastest growth at the beginning, and then most models follow an exponential growth before reaching the saturation. In practice, the saturation, the carrying capacity property, is often never measured because the host dies before the saturation phase begins, or also in preclinics, the experiments have to be stopped if a specific tumor size is reached. Nonetheless, it can be really interesting to use these models because if I plan to use a model not only to capture some data, but also to investigate new situations with simulations, I may want to see a true saturation if I simulate a large time period. And for this, I should choose a model with a carrying capacity. If the carrying capacity is difficult to estimate, then it is possible to fix it to a plausible value or fix a prior to estimate a value close to the prior. So there are different approaches to handle these types of models. So that was it for the tumor growth functions that are available in this part of the library. In addition, there is a module additional feature that allows to select among two additional features for the tumor growth. Actually, there are many different additional features in the literature, such as metastasis, for example. And in the library, we have included only two examples, angiogenesis, which consists in a dynamic carrying capacity due to the formation of vasculature as part of angiogenesis, and immune dynamics, which takes into account the control of the tumor growth by the immune system. These two features produce quite complex models that are less common than the other features of the libraries. So I will not take the time to detail them in this webinar, but if you want to know more, you can have a look at our documentation and you will have all the equations and some typical predictions with these features. Now, my next part is to detail the different ways to encode the treatment and initial tumor size for in the models of the library. So we have seen that the library of models is compatible with different options to handle this the treatment or the initial tumor size in the model and in the data. And these different options can be chosen depending on the situation. So I will detail them now, starting with several ways of encoding the initial tumor size. Usually, the tumor size can be estimated as a parameter. In that case, the tumor size, which in the models of the library is called TS0, is included in the input list of the models from the library to be estimated by Monolix. You have to note that TS0 is not the initial the tumor size at time 0, but at the initial integration time. And I will detail this a bit later, but this is not always the same thing. Sometimes the initial integration time can be the time of the first dose or the observation, the time of the first observation for each individual. So I will detail a bit later exactly what are the different options and at which times this TS0 can correspond. Anyway, when we use TS0 as a parameter, TS0 is estimated in the model and not in the data, and it is not included in the data. The other option is to read directly TS0 as a regressor. This is an interesting option if you think that the initial tumor size does not follow a classical distribution that would allow to describe the parameter in the population. In that case, the value for TS0 has to be included in the data set as in a new column. It has to be included at least for the first record for each individual, and then the same value can be repeated. Sorry, same value can be repeated for the other records, or the information can be missing. And in that case, the value for TS0 is read from in the model with this line here, use equals regressor, rather than being estimated in monoliths. Then let's see the different options to encode the treatment. So these are the different options available in the library when you want to include a treatment effect in your model. The first option is to build a joint model for the drug concentration and the tumor size, and to model the drug concentration as a PK model that is included in the structural model along with the equation for the tumor size. This model is by default a simple one compartment model with a bolus administration and linear elimination with only two parameters V and K. So this type of implementation is possible if the dosing information is available. Then the amounts and dosing times have to be included in the data set in a column amount, and they are directly read in the model to produce predictions based on this PK model. The PK parameters V and K can be estimated if PK data is available along with tumor size data. Otherwise, they have to be fixed to literature values. And of course, it is possible for the user to modify the model from the library to implement a different PK model than this default model with only two parameters. One thing that has to be noticed is that this kind of implementation can have a high computation cost if there are dense doses over a large treatment period in the data, because then the model, all the doses will have to be taken into account in the model, which might induce a high computation cost. So it is not recommended to use this implementation in such a case. In such a case, it would be better to replace the dense doses over the large treatment period by summarizing information, such as an exposure metric, for example, the average concentration. And so when we want to use this kind of implementation, where we use an exposure metric from the data, this exposure metric has to be can be read as a regressor from the data set. So like for TS0 before, it has to be defined in the model with this statement here. And then it has to be included in the data set as a new column. This exposure can come from PK concentration, or it can be the AUC or the Cmax or whatever metric. That can be interesting to take into account the effect of the treatment on the tumor size. It can be constant or it can be time varying. And it has to be noted that as for all regressors in monoliths, the carried forward interpolation is used to impute the values between the different records. And it is not necessary to use the exact same names in the data and in the model. These names can be different. And for all the models in the library, the name in the model is called exposure. The next possibility for the treatment is to define, to take into account a constant treatment that starts at time 0. In that case, no treatment information is needed in the data set, but this assumption is directly encoded in the model with an if-else statement that applies the treatment only after time equals 0, for example, here for a very simple treatment. This option uses an intermediate variable that you can see here, DTS, that then is inputted in the ODE equation for the tumor size. This is because it is not possible to define an ODE equation directly in the if-else statement in the MLXtran. This is why we have this intermediate variable. Then the next option is to take into account a constant treatment that starts at a time different than 0, at a time that is given in the data set, and that can possibly be different between the different individuals. In that case, there should be just one additional column that contains this time in the data set, and then it can be read as a regressor in the model like this. So this is what is encoded for this option in the library. And finally, the last option that is proposed is to apply the constant treatment effect or not, depending on the value of a regressor in the data set. That can be constant or not in time for each individual. But this regressor must be a number, 0, 1. So 0 indicates no treatment, and 1 indicates 1 or more than 1 indicates that the treatment should be applied. So it can be, for example, the treatment arm to distinguish the placebo group for individuals that have not received treatment and individuals that have received treatment, or it can also be used to encode a treatment that is on-off, that is not given at all times for each individual. So now that we have seen the different types of treatment that can be encoded in the data, that can be chosen here, I will show the different models for the treatment effect to inhibit the tumor growth that are available here. So we'll start with the two killing hypotheses that are proposed in the library. First, the log kill hypothesis has been established by Skipper, Scabell, and Wilcox. And it states that in response to treatment with a dose of a drug, a constant fraction of the cells are killed, usually by increasing apoptosis. So in this equation, growth is any growth function that we have seen previously, and K is the killing strength, and it can be constant or it can depend on the drug concentration. Then Norton and Simon refined the log kill hypothesis, and the hallmark of their hypothesis is that the rate of the reduction, tumor size reduction is proportional to the rate of tumor growth. According to this model, the killing is not constant, but instead it is proportional to the relative growth rate. For example, this figure compares the two hypotheses with an exponential growth and a constant killing term K that starts at time 30. And you see that the inhibition from the Norton-Simon model depends on the growth rate, which is indicated here with different values, while the log kill does not. So this is one of the main differences between these two hypotheses. Let's now see how we can define the treatment kinetics K. So this corresponds to these different options here. These are the 4 common exposure-dependent treatment effect kinetics that can be combined in the library with both these scaling hypotheses. I have compared on these plots simulations based on an exposure indicated here, which is a drug concentration following a single dose with different amounts. And we can see that in the first kinetic corresponding to the first order kinetics, the treatment effect is linear with exposure. Then for the exponential kill, this is an exponential relationship between exposure and treatment effect. So it induces some more flexibility in the curve for the inhibition. I won't take the time to detail exactly this figure that is on our documentation, but that shows that we have some more flexibility. And then on the right, we can see the two nonlinear kinetics. First, one that considers an Emax model that is commonly used to model nonlinear drug exposure effect relationship, and a simple extension to a Hill function that can bring more flexibility on the curves. Of course, it is also possible to take into account an exposure-independent treatment, for example, a constant treatment applied starting at a given time. And in that case, the only option in the library is a constant killing effect during the treatment duration. So it would correspond to K equals K kill. Now let's see the different options for delays. We know that chemotherapeutic effects often appear days or weeks following drug exposure. So this delay is usually described with transit compartments. either either the treatment effect, transit compartment in the treatment effect with a signal distribution model, or cell death with a cell distribution model. So this corresponds to these two options. In the signal distribution model, a series of first-order transfer steps are incorporated to characterize the delay between exposure to the treatment and the cell killing with K3. And tau refers to the mean transit time in each transit compartment. In the cell distribution model, now these delays are characterized by the transit of cells through several stages of cell damage following the initial treatment exposure, that corresponds to K here, before being truly killed off with the population TS3. So the attacked tumor cells actually have a lifespan with this model. And here the variable that represents the data is the total tumor size that combines the cells in all compartments. So there are some differences that we can see on the figures between these two models. The treatment effect for cell distribution is visible right from the start, but is attenuated by the delay, while for the signal distribution, it is the treatment effect starts after a delay. And for the signal distribution model, the delay actually depends strongly on the signal intensity. The drawback of this model is that the number of transit compartments is chosen arbitrarily, and it affects the shape of the tumor growth inhibition. But these models can, of course, be easily adapted to include more or less transit compartments if needed. Note that the cell distribution model is well known as the delay implemented in the full Simeoni model that corresponds to this reference, and that we have in the shortcuts here, and that corresponds to these choices. So the Simeoni growth function with a log-kill hypothesis, first-order dynamics, and cell distribution delay. Now let's have a look at the options for resistance. So a very common resistance model is the Claret model, which accounts for the loss of drug-induced decay over time due to the declining efficacy of the drug with this term, which can be due to the emergence of resistance. The original model shown here uses an exponential tumor growth and a linear log-kill treatment effect. And it uses on this slide a constant treatment that starts at time 0. So it has the advantage of being described with an analytical solution. This model corresponds to the shortcut Claret exponential that is in the library with exponential tumor growth and a first-order log-kill treatment effect with Claret resistance. And it is possible to actually combine only the resistance term with any tumor growth function here on any common treatment kinetics. So using just this term that can be seen on this slide. Apart from this model, resistance is usually described with more mechanistic models that try to represent the heterogeneity in the cell population with different subpopulations that can be the proliferating and the quiescent cells, or treatment sensitive and treatment resistant cells. So this slide shows the family of models corresponding to this approach with one resistant population. So it assumes that a fraction of the tumor, called here TSR, is resistant to the treatment, and it is killed with a smaller rate than the sensitive part of the tumor. Many variants are possible that can take into account or not transformation between sensitive and resistant cells, different growth functions for the two populations, the killing of the resistant cells or not, and also possible decay terms for each population. Some of these properties are actually redundant for some function for the growth and the killing. So it is usually not useful to include all these processes in the model. For instance, the initial fraction of resistant cells can have the same impact on the total tumor as the transfer of sensitive cells to resistant cells. So in the tumor growth inhibition library in MONOLIX, we have chosen a simple version of this model that is available with two subpopulations that have different growth rates. Actually, that do not correspond to this one, but that have different growth rates. One is treatment sensitive and the other in treatment resistant. There is no transfer between the two, but the resistance population emerges from an initial fraction of cells that is corresponds to the parameter F. And this model can also be combined with different growth functions and different treatment kinetics. Here on this figure, we can see some differences between the Claret and resistant population for a constant treatment exposure that starts at time 0. And so we see that the emergence of the resistance, it's actually easier to see on log scale here on the right. The emergence of the resistance is more progressive with the Claret model than with the resistant population. All right, of course, many other examples of models with resistant populations exist in the literature. I will also present 3 other more complex examples that are included in the literature, that are included in the library as full models that do not have any combination with different tumor growth functions or treatment effect, but that are really defined just as full models. But of course, it is possible for the user to also modify these models if needed. So first, the evolutionary model or 2 populations that is available as the last option in the shortcut in the library is an even simpler version than the one I have shown before, with only growth of the resistance population and only killing of the sensitive population. So it has the advantage of having this analytical solution for content exposure. Then the Stein model is another example of a phenomenological model that combines an exponential growth and an exponential decay in analytical solutions, which is slightly different, and it gives this type of prediction. And it is available with this shortcut. Finally, the RIBA model, available also in the shortcut, is a more complex mechanistic version of the resistant population model with 3 variables for the tumor. P is the proliferative tissue, Q the non-proliferative or quiescent tissue, and QP the DNA damaged quiescent cells. So the proliferative tissue is assumed to transition to quiescence at a rate, this rate constant. And the treatment concentration affects both the proliferative tissue and the quiescent tissue. The tissue composed of cells in proliferation is directly eliminated because of the DNA damage induced by the treatment. And the non-proliferative tissue, so Q, is also subject to DNA damage to the treatment that leads to the damaged quiescent tissue QP. And then when we're re-entering the cell cycle, these DNA damaged quiescent cells can either repair their DNA damage and return to proliferative state, or die because of the unrepaired damages. So this is slightly more complex. I will then very briefly introduce some good practices for model definition in MonolX. So some characteristics of the implementation of these models from the library that show another advantage of the built-in library provided with MonolX, which is that we have made sure to implement each model according to these guidelines to avoid any issue. So first, when a model has analytical solution, it is of course much more efficient to use the analytical solution than the equivalent ODE system. And this is what is done in the library, in particular for most tumor growth functions when they are used alone. And here is an example of model for the exponential linear model. So this model here will work in MonolX. However, so numerical errors may happen in some cases because TS can become very high, so high that it could be considered as infinite by the solver. And this issue can happen frequently for exponential growth, or it can also occur for simulations based on the model, if in particular, if I want to simulate large time periods. So if I want to prevent this, I can add a saturation with the mean function, such that the tumor size will not increase more than this threshold. And this is a precaution that is implemented in the library to avoid numerical errors. Then for models defined with an ODE system, for example, here the Simeoni growth function, the same saturation is defined with an if-else statement to avoid any error. In addition, the models are implemented to avoid possible mathematical undefined situation. For example, if TS becomes slightly negative under an exponent, like here, which can happen even though TS is supposed to stay positive or null because of numerical approximation. So with this kind of saturation, we avoid any numerical error. Another thing to consider for ODE systems is the initial integration time that is implemented with T_0 in MLXtran. This initial integration time can be negative, it can be any number, and it is also optional. So if it is not included, then the time of the initial integration is actually the time of the first dose or observation, and it can vary between individuals. So on the next slide, we can compare the situations a bit better, situations where I have defined T_0 as 0 or not. In this case, the first observation for the same individual here that we can see on the left and the right, the first observation occurs at time 13, not 0. And if I do not define T_0 in the model, then if this individual receives no dose before this observation, the initial integration time is then 13 here. So if TS0 is a 10 for the initial tumor size, so actually this TS0 is actually the tumor size at time 13, as we can see on the prediction here. And the initial integration time may be different for other individuals. Now, if I define T_0 equals 0, then TS0, the parameter in the model, is actually the tumor size at time 0 at the initial integration time. So the tumor size that we see in the prediction at time 13 is much higher because the tumor already had some time to grow between 0 and 13. So both situations can be desirable depending on what is in your data and your model, and it can be really interesting to have different initial integration times between individuals, but you just have to make sure that this is what you want. And in the models from the library, the initial integration time is not fixed by default to be able to model also observations at negative times, but this choice is just commented in the models to warn the user that depending on the situation, it can also be relevant to uncomment the line and fix the initial integration time. Okay, so this was it for all the options from the library. Now I would like to show two short examples of tumor growth models estimated on real data set. This will be summaries of modeling workflow. And the first is on a combination therapy in lung cancer xenograft. So this is a model that we have that has been estimated on based on data published in this paper here and modeled in this paper. The context of this study is to focus on bevacizumab, which is a molecule that is used in combination with pemetrexed and cisplatin, which is chemotherapy, as the first-line therapeutic for advanced non-squamous non-small cell lung cancer. And the action of bevacizumab is to potentiate the cytotoxicity of chemotherapy by inducing transient tumor vasculature normalization. But this occurs with a delay, so within a period of a few days after the administration of bevacizumab. So the goal of the study was to estimate the optimal gap between the administration of bevacizumab and chemotherapy to reach the full activation. So the data set looks like this. It is composed of measurements from 77 xenografts of lung cancer in mice. The data set actually contains two types of measurements, tumor size and survival. So we can see the tumor size here and the survival here as Kaplan-Meier plots. All the individuals three drugs have been given for some of the individuals. Each drug has been given 3 times every 2 weeks. And there are actually 5 treatment arms, or 5 groups. The control group corresponding to this group here has received no treatment. The chemo group corresponding to this one has received pemetrexed and cisplatin. So this is chemotherapy, standard chemotherapy. And then the 3 other groups have received bevacizumab in addition to chemotherapy. But in the group, in one of the groups, this administration is concomitant. In the other group, the bevacizumab was given 3 days before chemotherapy. And in the last group, bevacizumab was given 8 days before. So if we have a further look at the data in the different groups, We can focus on the control group first to have a look at the in-log scale to check the shape of the tumor growth in the data. What we can see is that this data seems to not correspond to an exponential or linear model because we can see some inflection in the tumor growth, and we see no clear carrying capacity. So these are properties that can help to identify a good model. Then if we have a look at the data in the rest of the groups, for the chemotherapy group where we have only the chemotherapy that was given, we can see that the treatment effect is quite small actually, and it seems a bit delayed after each dose was administered. And then if we have a look at all the groups except the control, so to compare the impact of bevacizumab, it seems that bevacizumab can make a difference in the group where it was given concomitantly to chemotherapy and 3 days before. So it seems to make a small difference compared to the group that had only chemotherapy, but not with the group that had a 8 days gap. These differences are quite small, so actually that's also why it's interesting to estimate a model to check if the model can capture an effect of bevacizumab. And then if we focus on the survival data and compare the Kaplan-Meier plots for the different groups, we can see quite some differences in the group. So the control group has a survival, a much lower survival. Actually here, in this case, the survival is directly linked to the size of the tumor, since this is preclinical data, so the mice are sacrificed when the tumors reach some threshold size. To model this data, this can be done in 4 steps. Well, of course, when modeling your data, the choice of the model should also be guided by your knowledge of the biological system. But here I will show a stepwise modeling workflow without using prior knowledge on the data to show how MONOLIX can be used to easily try and compare several models to fit this data. So we recommend to first analyze only the control group in order to choose a good tumor growth model that is the most appropriate. And once it is done, add the tumor growth inhibition part to model the treatment groups, first the chemo group and then the group that also received bevacizumab, and finally survival. And this is quite easy to do thanks to the filtering option in MONOLIX that allows to filter part of the data for some steps of the analysis. So this is what this is a workflow that I have followed in MONOLIX. I have started for the first step by comparing different growth functions, and here we can see the result in Sycomore, where all these different options functions have been estimated, and we have the log likelihood values with the BIC. And so the result of this is that the exponential linear or Simeoni model, this is equivalent, gives the best result, and we can compare the result with the core and logistic functions that are quite similar. But what we see here is that the sharp switch that we have between the exponential and linear phases with the exponential linear or Simeoni model gives a slightly better result than with the core function or the logistic function. After finding this good tumor growth function, the next step is to find a good treatment effect for the chemotherapy. And for this, we can use all the possible inhibition, all the possible options for the inhibition model. So the different killing hypotheses, different dynamics, and we have seen in the data that there is a need for a delay, but not for resistance. So this makes 16 combinations, and the library allows to easily test all these different hypotheses if necessary. So this is what I have done. I can show an example of the model that gave the best results. This is a model with Norton-Simon linear killing and signal distribution. And here we see the model from the library with the default PK model. Actually, we do not have PK data here to estimate the parameters for this model, and this model is not appropriate for chemotherapy. So this model had to be extended, modified to replace the standard PK model by custom PK models from the literature with fixed parameters to model properly the dosing information given in the data for cisplatin and for pemetrexed. This is quite easy to do. After doing this and getting a good model just for chemotherapy, the next step was to extend again this model to take into account the effect of bevacizumab with the activation of killing with a delay. And this was implemented with this term here, and with two new parameters, delta for the activation by bevacizumab, and Tlag, which is the delay in the absorption of bevacizumab. So overall, this final model on the tumor growth data gave quite good results, and we can see the result on this slide. So the parameters were estimated with quite good confidence, and we can see some slight differences in the predictions for the different groups. In particular, a smaller tumor size for the group where bevacizumab was given 3 days before chemotherapy. The next step would be to finally include also the survival data with a joint tumor growth and time to event model. However, I don't think I will have enough time to detail this, so I'm going to skip this, which is actually an extension of the model that we have in the library and which is not directly included in the library, and I will go straight to my next example. So my next example is about a case study interested in the PSA in metastatic castration-resistant prostate cancer treated with chemotherapy. So it's based on a data set published in this paper. It comes from the control arm of a phase 3 clinical trial, and the data has been measured in 400 men that have been treated with docetaxel and prednisolone. And it contains two types of observation: PSA concentration, so prostate-specific antigen, which is a marker of tumor size. And also, we also have the survival data, but here I will only focus on PSA. I will just show briefly some particularities in the data set. So we have the typical column with ID, time, observations, censoring, and the observation types. In addition, I have two columns to be used as regressor in the data set. One is the initial tumor size, and the second is the time of end of the treatment for each individual. So here the treatment is considered as constant, and it starts at time 0 for all individuals. For example, this individual, it will start here, but the treatment duration is different for each individual. So for this individual, it would stop here. So there is no explicit treatment dose in the data, but the treatment duration will be read in the data with this column and used to directly encode the treatment effect in the model. And I won't detail the other columns here because I won't have the time. But so we can focus a bit more on the data, on the full data set. Here it is. Here we can see a few examples of typical profiles to have something a bit less overcrowded than here. And here we see two individuals where we have the treatment period that is indicated with dashed vertical line. So what we can see is that there is a clear emergence of resistance to the treatment. And also a few individuals actually show sustained effect of treatment after the therapy. But for most of them, there is resistance. So like in the previous example, if the knowledge we have on the data is consistent with different hypotheses, it can be convenient to start with a very simple model and then follow a modeling workflow in several steps to compare at each step one type of hypothesis using the diagnostic plots and the likelihood information to select the base hypothesis. So since we have seen resistance in the data, I have started with this very simple model that is able to capture the resistance. So this is a model with an exponential growth, a log-kill treatment effect, and Claret resistance with the term here with the exponential and the lambda. And of course, this model is adapted to this data. So the initial tumor size is read as regressor. There is no fixed initial time, and the treatment effect is applied after time 0. This is the model from the library, and it has to be customized a little bit to take into account the end of the treatment that I have shown you in the data. So to do this, I have just added the time of end of treatment as another regressor that is used here for the application of the treatment in this time period. And the result of this model gives this diagnostic plot. And based on this result, we can identify misspecifications in this first simple model to adjust the model. So first misspecification is due to that we can see also in the odds versus spread plot, is due to the maximal tumor size observed on some individual fits, for example, this one, that is not captured by this model. So I can compare variants of this model with growth functions that include saturation. And after doing this, I have found the Simeoni logistic function to give the best result. Then as a next step, based on this, I have tried to adjust the model with different killing hypotheses for the treatment effects. And so I have compared the log kill and the Norton-Simon hypothesis. And I have found, I won't have the time to detail really the diagnostic plots, but I have found that the log kill hypothesis gives the best result in this case. Then I have also compared the two available options for the resistance term. So to check whether the two population model could perform better than the Claret resistance. And indeed it did, because the Claret exponential, as we can see mainly here, the Claret exponential resistance is too progressive in some individuals compared to the two population resistance. And finally, I have added a delay in the treatment effect with one of the two options. And comparing the diagnostic plots and the log likelihood information, I have found that the cell distribution model allowed to better capture the inhibition for some of the individual profiles. So in the end, the final model that I have built stepwise produced this diagnostic plot that show good that the model is captures well the data for most individuals. All right, I will stop here and I will keep some time to answer some questions.